false spontaneity turns out to be a really good way of understanding a lot of things. The term originally, as far as I know, originates in a sociological context, and it's referring to ideology. And the concept of ideology is more clearly defined in sociology. So normally we have a bit of a vague idea about ideology. We often do see it as a good thing. Ideology sounds like it's striving for ideals. Ideals are good. So we're living in the crap, but we've got these ideals which are great and ennobling. So we try to live up to them. So that's the usual way to understand ideology. And even if we're not talking about ideology, it's the usual way to understand how we function in life, how we have these key ideas that we try to follow to try to benefit ourselves, to make something of ourselves, to strive for some sort of higher meaning in life. Within sociology, that is not at all how ideology is used, though. The word ideology is used. It's more like a prison that we impose upon ourselves. So we absorb an ideology culturally, then it's in us, and then we live up to it and we become prisoners of the ideology. So it's a super efficient way of imprisoning people. A stupid way is to build big old prisons with big walls all around them and landings and all the rest of it. We all know what prisons look like. That's stupid. Everyone in a prison knows they're in prison. Just about most of the time. You might forget from time to time, I suppose. If you're in HMP Wandsworth, you bloody well know you're in HMP Wandsworth. You can tell. It's got that feel to it. So that's a stupid way to keep people prisoners, because when you're a prisoner, then you know you're a prisoner. And so at least you've got that much, the awareness that you're not free, which ideology does not permit us. So when we look around us at people who are in the grip of ideology, we can see driven people, people who are imprisoned by their own ideas, only they're not their own ideas, they're the ideas that have got into our head. We can feel good about having an ideology and living up to the ideology because it gives us direction, it gives us meaning in life, it helps us make sense of things. We can say, yes, this is this, because it helps to achieve the goals and values of the ideology. Or no, this is bad because etc., etc., etc. So it gives us a whole picture of life, and that's handy because it helps us to orientate ourselves. We just have to get on with it. Once we've got the ideology, we've got the big picture, we just need to work on the details. So in a superficial sense, we like ideologies and it seems to be doing us good. But really, when we live our life in tune with or according to an ideology, we're not living life, we're living that ideology. We're living out the ideology. The ideology lives through us. We're enacting the ideology with everything we've got. But that ideology isn't us, and it isn't anything else, anything to do with us, and it's nothing to do with reality, because reality and idea, they're two totally different things. Ideas and reality, two totally different things. So here we are, we're completely divorced from reality straight away. But the key point that I originally meant to come to is that when we are acting out a belief, acting out an ideology, acting out an overall world view, we perceive this to be an act of volition on our part, that we've seen the light and we're acting in accordance with it. But actually, we haven't seen the light, we've just been blinded by the ideology. And when I feel, yes, I'm living my life in accordance with the ideology, in accordance with the values of the ideology, I'm not. I'm just living the ideology and I'm not in it. The ideology is living itself through me. And the thing about an ideology is that it's not life. So I'm not living my best life by living according to an ideology. I'm not living my worst life either. I'm not living any life of mine. I'm not living any version of life at all because ideology isn't a life. Life is a free thing. It happens by itself as it will. As Alan Watts says, it's like the wind that bloweth here and bloweth there according to how it blows. It's free. That that breeze or that wind that Alan Watts is talking to about, maybe he's quoting a poem or something like that. It's totally free. It's not part of an ideology. An ideology is a horror. It's a prison world that we're trapped in, and yet, because we embrace it so much, we think we're living freely and that we imagine ourselves to be exercising our freedom to choose the right path, which we are doing, which we feel correspondingly good about. So that is very ironic because we're feeling smug, we're feeling like we're on the right path as a result of being completely hoodwinked, being completely conditioned or brainwashed. And of course, that isn't such an unfamiliar, this irony isn't unfamiliar to us because we can see it easily in others. Every prisoner of a belief believes themselves to be on the right track and everyone else to be totally on the wrong track. And that is a manifestation of false spontaneity. The belief or ideology works by getting us to live it. So the ideology is living itself, enacting itself through us. It's utilizing us to live itself through. And at the same time, it gives us this good feeling that we're doing what we really want to do, and that feels good. Even though we're not doing what we want to do, we're doing what the ideology or the belief wants us to do. So that's false spontaneity in a sociological framework. In the psychological framework, it includes beliefs and opinions and philosophies and all that kind of stuff, religious beliefs, etc., etc. But it goes beyond that because there's lots of stuff which the mind does which doesn't constitute an ideology. The mind defines the world for us. It defines everything that we see around us in our everyday lives. Mundane things, unimportant things, and important things maybe. Everything like a teacup on the table, a cockroach crawling across the floor. All these things the mind defines. And when the mind defines something for us, we don't perceive this in an objective way as here is the thinking mind defining something for me within its own terms, because that's the only way the thinking mind can define things. We perceive this is a this. This is the teacup really is a teacup. The hat really is a hat. As your man says, Margarita, or wherever it is. So there is a level of irony that has been lost. The irony is this is a hat, and the non-ironic statement is this is a hat, and there's no um, other meaning to it. It just is what it is. It is what the label says. It is what it is. End of story. See, this is kind of like a sterile kind of, what's like a shortcut, a cul-de-sac. You go down this road and it's, yeah, this is a this, that is a that, you are the this. All of these things are dead ends because thought is always a dead end because thought works via definitions or categories, which is the same thing. And once we categorize, once we define, we end just there because we don't go any further because that's the whole point of a definition. Once I've defined it, I've tied it up in a nice package, I've tied the boat, that's it. That's the whole point of a definition. That's the whole point of jumping to a conclusion. We don't jump to a conclusion in order to continually reflect upon it. We jump to a conclusion so that we can just be done with it and get on and just assume that is the case, whatever the hell it is. Because we're not really interested. In fact, it's not that we're not interested. We absolutely want to nail everything down so there isn't any threat of radical uncertainty, which is the actual stuff that lurks behind all of our definitions. So we've created a wall of our concrete literal descriptions, and behind that wall there is this living stuff or living thing that we could call radical uncertainty, and that's the stuff that won't fit into our categories. Categories are little squares, and you get a square thing and you put it in and you think, yay, that fits in my category. So we're doing that the whole time. We're fitting the world into our mental categories. Like, yay, this is a this and this is a that and that's the other. And we're obsessed with fitting everything in. And if we can't fit something in, we worry about it and work away at it until either we do fit it in or we just get disgusted and ignore it. Or if we can't ignore it, if we can't get thought to go into all, if we can't get the world to fit into all of those categories for it, and we really can't, and it's a big issue, not a small issue, it's kind of more widespread, then we'll experience ourselves as being psychotic. We're dealing with a reality that is completely other than what I thought it was, a reality that I cannot tame and make to be the reality that I and everyone else think it should be. It's a reality that I just can't account for. I can't get any angle on it. And it's not a passive kind of thing. This isn't like we normally think of reality as just being, or the world as being a passive stage upon which we can enact our tedious dramas, but it isn't. Um, it's actually alive, we could say, or we could also say that it's intelligent, it's mobile, it's free, it's uncontained, all these things. So all these things are, we could associate them with the alchemical um, personage of Mercurius, the winged god. Um, this mysterious being who can't be pinned down. So the key thing about Mercurius is he can't be pinned down. So as Jung writes, he's as likely to be found hanging out with thieves and villains in a low tavern as he is with cardinals and popes and the upper crust of society. He's equally at home either, so we don't know where to expect him. He has many faces and doesn't belong anywhere. And when we try to catch him, he is elusiveness personified. So the image will be used of a fugitive stag, as in a stag hunt. And the stag is eluding the hunters. in a very skillful way. And that always happens when we try to pin down, when we try to identify and say and isolate and say what Mercurius is. So what Mercurius stands for is the essence of reality itself, that which is not in our categories. So it's that which is other to the world of known facts and figures, that which is other to the world we make up for ourselves, the world of that where everything is labelled, the named world. So we live in a named world. And we kind of get a good sense of security out of this because in the named world, there is no radical uncertainty. There's just the one thing, and then a bit later on, there's the other thing, but they're joined together. So you go straight from one mind created construct to another. And when all of these mind created constructs are laid out end to end, it creates a seamless world of constructs, a construct world, which is familiar to us, but which is not real because it's just thought's picture of things. So, stretching the concept of false spontaneity here, although not really, it's kind of not too far off. When we perceive the world around us to be what thought says it is, without actually realizing that this is just what thought says it is, but perceive it as self-evidently as true, then that's a version of false spontaneity. If I articulate some kind of opinion or prejudice, and I articulate it, I shout it out, I say, I come out with my opinion, I get the good feeling that it hasn't been scripted. It's me coming out with it for the first time. It's original to me, as well as being a genius remark, really, really insightful and on the nail. And I say this thing, which is pure dumb stupid, and which has been said a billion times before, and which somehow has got into my head and is making me say it again. And yet at the same time, even though it's all scripted and it's pure dumb, I feel like I'm a genius coming out with something for the first time. That everyone should listen to me and kneel down and go, wow. That's false spontaneity as applied to opinions. As applied to how we perceive the world, how the world is scripted by thought. Every little bit of script is scripted. Every bit of the world we perceive is scripted by thought. If it wasn't, we wouldn't perceive it. Or rather, we might perceive it, but we'd dismiss it because we would not be able to confirm it or prove it, because we love proving things. Is it true? Is it real? Let me check. See if thought will validate it for me. And if thought doesn't validate it for me, then I pretend it never happened. I write it off as an anomaly. But the ongoing perception that we have all the time is that things are what they self-evidently appear to be, and this is me seeing what they are. This is me exercising my freedom in a way, because I'm free to see what the right picture of the world is. I'm free to see what is true. I'm free to see what's out there, what it is. But it isn't, because what I see is scripted by thought, and my perception that I'm seeing truly for myself and not being brainwashed is also scripted by thought. So this nice feeling that we have of being autonomous, making up our own mind, thinking for ourselves, that good feeling of being not controlled by thought is part of what's being provided for me by thought. It's scripted. My belief in my own autonomy is scripted. So I can be autonomous in my own imagination within the realm of thought only not really. So this gives us a way of looking at what the movement of life is really about. So the movement of life, we might say, gets perverted to follow the structures of thought. Like a river can be diverted into a canal and taken here and taken there and used to run things. It's mechanized. It's part of some greater plan. So that's the movement of life after it has been subverted. Now, all of us, every single one of us, we're all examples of the movement of life as it has been mechanically subverted. And the pain of neurosis is the way in which we do start to perceive the pain of our imprisonment. That we didn't know that the thought created world is a prison, and that the thought created me or you is a prison. We didn't know that, but through neurosis, through that pain, we start to learn it on a non-intellectual level, on a kind of much deeper level than that. Life, in a manner of speaking, we can say that life doesn't want to be regulated. It doesn't want to be subverted into serving the aims of thought or the aims of the ego. It doesn't want that. That's possibly not a good way, not a great way to say it, but we can say it like that. We could also say that the psyche operates so as to correct this abnormal and pain-producing situation. And neurosis is how the psyche does this. Neurosis is the way the psyche brings us back to wholeness. It's a painful process, but then we depart from process via our apparent volition, which is our conditioning. We return to wholeness via against our will, but really it isn't against our will, it's just against the conditioning which we think is our will. Our approach in our society is to take neuroticism as being just something that gets in the way of us living as we should do, i.e., gets in the way of us living our conditioned life as we should do. So neurosis is the problem to us, not the cure. It's the thing that needs to be fixed. So we try to fix it in a mechanical way, and all mechanical, rational therapies are about diverting the flow of life in the way which we think. So we're digging new canals and we're putting in new locks and new paraphernalia. That's what rational therapy is. We're departing even more from wholeness. So really rational therapy is another level of our underlying neurosis, which takes the suffering of that neurosis to another level.